Hey there, everybody. It's me, your buddy Dave, the host here of the Dark Stuff channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out my new video. In today's video, I'm joined by a good friend of mine named Christopher Standish. Chris and I have known each other for 30 years or so. We met back in college at the University of Wisconsin in the very early 90s. I invited Chris onto the show to talk about Cheap Trick in the 1980s. He and I are both massive Cheap Trick fans and have been for decades. But rather than just discussing like the albums that everyone discusses, Budokan or In Color or Dream Police or whatever, I wanted to take on a little bit more of a controversial period, or a period not exactly considered a high mark in their career, and that is the records of the 1980s for Cheap Trick. Suffice it to say that we found a lot of merit in a lot of these 80s records, some that are maligned as, the worst Cheap Trick records of their career. So we're going to go through record by record, discussing each one, the positives, the negatives, and just giving our general feelings on this amazing band. This is an odd period for them, but it doesn't mean that it's an all bad period, okay? A little note about my friend Chris. So he is a musician and songwriter, and he's been making music as long as I've known him. His most recent project is this. It's called Admiral Academy. It's essentially a solo album of his, and I'm going to put the address on the screen for his Bandcamp page so you can order a copy of that record or download it or whatever you do there on Bandcamp. That is Chris's most recent thing. It's really good. I'd like you to check it out. All right, everybody, enjoy the video. Let's set the stage. 1980 is where we're gonna start. Cheap Trick is pretty much at their commercial peak at that point. They're coming off their biggest albums of their entire career, which was the Budokan live album and Dream Police studio record, which was a big multi-platinum record. So they're coming into 1980, and they're so big that they even get the Beatles producer George Martin to make their album. The album, All Shook Up, came out October 24th, 1980. And then shortly after the album comes out, Tom Peterson leaves the band. And so it's their first lineup change in the band's history at this point. So that's setting the stage for Cheap Trick right there. New album, but Tom quits the band right as it's coming out. It should be a big triumphant moment. They're working with the Beatles producer. Their whole thing is they're kind of like a hard rock Beatles. And then Tom sort of quits. Now, from what it wasn't like an acrimonious thing, was it? I mean, I think he was just sort of exhausted, didn't want to keep doing it anymore.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I mean, I was, I haven't heard any lore about the acrimony or anything like that. I do know he did that record with his girlfriend or wife. And I don't know if he was having the downtime, so decided to do that, or if that was part of his plan.
Well, whenever someone leaves a big group or whatever, it's always to musical differences, or they want to do a solo career or something. And it didn't seem like Tom did a ton in the years that he was gone.
No, just that one album.
Yeah, and then
they should have listened to prepare myself, but last time I listened to it, didn't make me want to listen to it again.
Well, I've never even heard it, so you're up on me because I haven't heard that one. You've got it. Is it sitting there?
I didn't think to grab it out before, but oh yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
Sounds like it looks.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there she is.
That was this. Is she still his wife?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Alas, I listen to records, but I don't follow so much the personal life.
Right. Well, that's okay. Okay, so here we go. All Shook Up. I don't have it on vinyl. This is my CD. You've got it right there up on the wall. This was the album. Like I said, October 1980. I love this album personally. I think it's a great record. I think sometimes the production is a little weird and kind of overblown, but it doesn't bother me too much. The album peaked at number 24 on Billboard. It went gold. Stop This Game, which I think is an amazing single, but only hit number 48 as a single. So already Cheap Trick went from platinum and this is gold, which is still great, but they're beginning their sort of 80s kind of commercial decline here. But you wouldn't be able to tell from All Shook Up, I don't think, because they played on SNL with their new bass player, Pete Comita, who had replaced Tom Peterson. And he was sort of like, as David Lee Roth used to say, here today, gone later today. Because he wasn't in the band for very long. It was always a big mystery. He was on the heavy metal soundtrack, which I know you have back there behind you. Cheap Trick has 2 awesome songs on that, and he's on there.
And he wrote one of those.
Awesome and he wrote one of them, and I think that's
the awesome song on there.
Part of the reason why he's not in the band has something to do with that song. So, have you heard this story?
No.
Okay, so the story that I've heard about the real reason why Pete Comita was out of the band is because that song that he wrote, which is Reach Out, he took sole credit for as writing, and apparently he wrote that with some other people in a band that he was in California prior to joining Cheap Trick, and they sued to get credit for the song. And so Rick Nielsen was sort of pissed that I bring this new guy into the band and we're immediately getting sued. And so I think that
they sued Cheap Trick. Because I guess it was
they sued Cheap Trick because and he basically said he took credit for it. And then I heard another little tidbit that there is a demo somewhere out there of Reach Out done by Pete Comita's band.
Yeah.
And the drummer on the track is Frankie Banali from Quiet Riot. And the bass player is Rudy Sarzo from Quiet Riot.
Wow.
Now, I've never heard it. I don't know the validity of that claim. Okay, so let's open it up about this album. So what are your basic thoughts on this record? I mean, favorite tracks or what do you think?
Well, the first time I ever saw Cheap Trick, they opened with Just Got Back.
Excellent tune.
So that would have been the Waukesha County Fair, 1990 or so, 1991. And it was the first time I saw him. And as you know, the song, it starts drums, vocals, and then the strings come in, right? So not knowing what all to expect. And as we all know now, they're just bashing live. So Bunny walks out, all in all his frump glory. And he just
so
sits
great.
He sits down at the tubs and he starts to, personally, like a floor tom beat is my favorite thing. So that's the first thing and then, it's like, it's summer, and the sun is just setting and there's a nice breeze and Robin walks out with his sunglasses on, the wind blowing his beautiful hair, and he starts singing the verse. And then all of a sudden, Rick just like races across the stage, leaps in the air, and brings down, the guitars. And Tom just sidles onto the stage with the 12-string thundering. I mean, that was it. That was it for me. And that's that song on that album. That was just such a great way to hear their sounds for the first time live.
That was probably about the same time that I saw them for the first time. It was either 89 or 90.
Okay.
Right in that period. I was listening to Cheap Trick a bit beforehand, but for years, because I know I had one-on-one on cassette, nice. Probably when I was like 12 or 13 or something, but I never saw them until probably that period, either Lap of Luxury, Busted, whatever, that sort of period. I love the record. I would say my favorite songs for sure are Stop This Game, which, trivia point here, was originally supposed to be called Can't Stop the Music. Like the first line of the song, I can't stop the music. But there's some disco movie that was about to come out called Can't Stop the Music. And so they decided they didn't want to be tied in with that. So it became Stop This Game. But it's cooler because that beginning of that song is just so great.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin's vocal is just amazing on that one. It's super Beatlesque. It's a co-write between the two. And, just a caveat or whatever, an aside, no matter how lame some of the Cheap Trick records get as we go on in this discussion, the problem is never Robin Zander's voice. Like he, there's like 67 songs they released in the 1980s. on an album, okay, not including B-side soundtrack stuff. Of those 67 songs, Robin's good on all 67. I mean, he's great even on like just terrible material. He's perfect. So
yeah.
Just set this record. I mean, they're doing a lot of the traditional Cheap Trick stuff. This is still Rick is writing most of the stuff. So it's kind of that harder Beatles with kind of weird sense of humor in the lyrics. And they're starting to do some kind of, they're starting to get a little, maybe some new wave eccentricities kind of coming in certain songs. High Priest of Rhythmic Noise, I would say, has that weird vocal effect.
Almost avant type influences.
Yeah. And you see that it's starting to edge into the sound a little bit. So it's not just your traditional rockers, but I do pretty much like most of the cuts on this record. I would say World's Greatest Lover. I don't know. I mean, I find that one kind of forgettable, but I don't really have a problem with any of the other songs. I think they're all pretty good. I didn't know this, that Love Comes a Tumbling Down was dedicated to Bon Scott.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just like perusing all the Wikipedia entries, and I saw that too.
Yeah, I had never heard that before. But I mean, they did tour together, I think, in the late 70s.
Yeah, and then I listened, and he says something about the highway to hell in the song.
Oh, does he?
I forget the actual lyrics, but yeah.
Okay.
So I read that, and then I heard that line. I was like, oh, there's something else in that. Is there something that when it's about Bon Scott makes sense? And he says highway to hell, which obviously could just be an idiot, but in this case,
no, in this case it is actually literally about Bon Scott. And that's a great tune also. I what's weird is, okay, so High Priest of Rhythmic Noise is where they're starting to put a little bit of weird electronic sounds and stuff, and not like 80s pop sheen, which they do a bit later. This is just like weird experimental stuff.
Yeah.
And there's like a series of tunes, and I'll get to it when we talk about the next record, but where they do that again, and they keep doing these songs where they put these weird electronic effects on the voice, or they have like almost like a second singer.
Yeah. Like 3D.
Yeah, 3D is another one of them.
Yeah.
I Want Be Man is the one I was referencing there on One. And they all sort of do it, and it's like really strange. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a sequence of songs or what,
like they're supposed to tie together through the albums.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you never know. I mean, other people have done that. I mean, have had like a returning sort of character that has come back in songs. I don't know if Rick Nielsen was really thinking that far ahead. I'm not sure, but
that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I've noticed those moments, but I didn't think that they might relate.
So we mentioned Pete Comita was here. He got fired. The next guy they brought in was John Brandt, who I think was a local guy for them, an Illinois guy. Okay. And they bring him in to play bass. They're doing a new record produced by Roy Thomas Baker. And apparently Rick actually plays the bass on almost every track on One except for 2 or 3, because John wasn't even fully in the band or whatever, and they were recording anyways.
Right.
So the next album is One. It's you and me against the world. It's you and me against the world. It's One.
Yep.
Okay. This is, spoiler alert, my favorite 80s Cheap Trick record right here. I love this album.
I don't think if you line them all up, I don't think, as far as 80s Cheap Trick records, I don't think there's any argument.
Well, that's nice to hear. that we're pretty much in agreement on that one.
My brother, it's his favorite Cheap Trick record of any decade.
It's actually the album the first Cheap Trick album I ever bought, and it's the Cheap Trick album I've purchased the most, because I bought it on cassette twice because they broke. I have bought it on record, and then at some point I lost the record, and then I had it on CD, and now I think I lost the CD. I bought it again on CD.
Because what are you going to do? Not have it?
I know I can't not have it.
No,
I can't not have it.
Travesty.
So it does feature John Brandt on the cover, even though he's only on a couple of tracks. But Tom Peterson did have a huge presence.
Face.
Yeah, just part of his face.
He's the only one partially obscured.
You think that was on purpose?
I think it said that on the Wikipedia.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Did it really? Okay, I overlooked that detail. I didn't notice that.
Or they pointed it out in the context that he didn't really play on it, so like as if maybe it was on purpose.
Maybe that's the case. Who knows? Came out April 30th, 1982. I mentioned Roy Thomas Baker, who at that point had a lot of success with the Cars and a bunch of other records at that point. So I think the thinking in terms of like Cheap Trick is they're still riding high on this wave. They're not really aware that they're sort of declining a bit in terms of, they're not right. They're in their own world, and the album does Billboard Top 200, hits number 39. If You Want My Love, which is an amazing single, only got to number 45. She's Tight got to number 65 as a single. The album didn't go gold in its initial run. 10 years later, it went gold.
Okay.
So this is the first Cheap Trick album now to go. There was platinum, then to gold, then to not quite gold. But I love this freaking album. I mean, I just think this is good start to finish. Even the weird ones, like I Want Be Man, let me think of some other weird ones. Saturday at Midnight's kind of strange. But even the strange ones are really good.
Yeah. I mean, they hang in there in the album just fine. But I mean, like the entire first side, and then She's Tight, Time Is Running, and Love's Got a Hold on Me are all number one hits. Like, in my ear,
they're absolutely perfect.
Killer chorus, like just driving, and as you said before, like Robin's vocals. I mean, he's just howling, but so melodically, and just like all those songs, they're just like.
No, it is so solid,
unstoppable. Yeah,
and I like Rick's guitar sound. It's a little bit heavier than it had been on All Shook Up, which was kind of toned down a little bit. It had the edge back on the sound. It's all of Rick Nielsen's kind of weird quirkiness in terms of his lyrics, like I
want to be the biggest gun in the world.
Right.
Best.
Like Looking Out for Number One, the Ode to Selfishness or whatever. It's all about me. She's Tight. An amazing single. Maybe was too racy to be on the radio in 1982. I don't know.
See, that's the thing though. It was on MTV.
It was.
I think
great video.
Yeah, She's Tight was pretty heavy rotation on MTV. So I mentioned the first time I saw Cheap Trick. I think I remember the first time I heard them was my babysitter had a 7-inch of Want You to Want Me.
Nice.
And like she was playing 7 inches when she was babysitting me one time. And then that was it. That like I was a little kid, so I didn't think to follow up on that, but I remember that. And then I remember seeing those two videos from this album on MTV and digging them. But again, for whatever reason, I never followed up. And then when I got to Madison, here I am in Wisconsin and everyone's just huge Cheap Trick heads and they all caught me up. They played me Cheap Trick and then took me to Waukesha to see the show. So,
that's awesome. Yeah. And you've been the hugest fan ever since.
Yes.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah.
I saw them every chance I could get until Bunny quit. And then
I kind of heard them around that same period, was this album.
Yeah.
I remember both of those videos for She's Tight and If You Want My Love. And I still can't believe If You Want My Love wasn't a bigger song. I mean, that's just so radio perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Every little part of it, just the pre-chorus and the chorus. I mean, God, everything is good on that song.
Yeah.
And then, then I kind of remember moving, I was more into metal and stuff for a while, and Cheap Trick really wasn't that heavy, but so I kind of put them aside, came back to them kind of lap of luxury period when the rest of the world did.
Right.
And when Tom came back. Yeah. But we're jumping ahead of the story here. So we're still in the John Brandt era. There is that weird sort of I Want Be Man, which is like we referenced. It's a little bit like that High Priest of Rhythmic Noise. It's got the weird sort of sci-fi lyrics. But I really like that second part of the song when it goes into something weird where it's like it's like that part. I want to live in your body.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's like just this weird extra song that could have been a separate song, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
They may have wedged two pieces together and didn't know what to do with it, so they made it into a weird robot thing.
Right, because that little bit was too good to just leave. You know, like you couldn't just let that part go. We have to actually do it. Okay.
Actually, I Want Be That Man is not a great song, but that bit makes it.
Yeah. We're moving on now to the 1983 record, which is next position, please.
And see, now that one's worth having on CD because it has.
It's got bonus tracks.
It has "Don't Make Love a Crime." Oh, there you go.
I've got this one on CD.
I got this, and then this guy's got "Don't Make Love a Crime." So
well, you know, if you look on Spotify at this record, there's a new version called the authorized version.
Yes.
And it puts it in a new order, running order. It takes Dancing the Night Away and puts it way at the end. And all those, the bonus tracks are now mixed in with the record. So it's in a different running order. It's apparently the way they wanted it. And the record company forced them to change. Or maybe it was Todd Rundgren, because he has a history of kind of
Todd
being a little heavy handed in terms of control when he's making a record. So so next position, please, came out August 15th, 1983, produced by Todd Rundgren. Huge name as a producer, great name as an artist, obviously known for being very heavy-handed as a producer, you know, for really exercising control. And if you don't want to work with someone like that, then don't go with Todd Rundgren. Except for his New York Dolls experience. I guess that was a little different.
Right. Yeah, it's a Todd Rundgren album with Cheap Trick playing on it.
Yeah. So I would say
he even wrote one on here.
He did. And you know what? I really like that song, Heaven's Falling. Yeah, it's fantastic. It does sound like a Utopia song, but with a better singer now. I mean, with Robin Zander singing it, you know, so it's just better. The guitar though is less edgy than it was on the last album. It's got a kind of a
clean and chorusy,
cleaner sound. It's a little bit slicker.
The songs are just killer.
The songs are great, but for some inexplicable reason, the record company made them release Dancing the Night Away as the first single for the album. And that's a cover. Right. And I think it's pretty awful personally. Todd Rundgren refused to produce it.
It's better than the original.
That you read and you think and you're making the grade.
I take your word on that. I haven't heard it. I don't know the original.
I was like, I got to hear the Motors version.
Was this like it was just like from a couple years before that, or was it like an old 60s song? Okay. Yeah. Well, Rundgren had nothing to do with it. That was produced by Ian Taylor. I guess their touring sound guy or something like that. Which says something. I actually don't particularly care for that song. I would say they could have just scrapped it, you know, because I Can't Take It is amazing. That's you can't do a Cheap Trick greatest hits without including that song. That's an amazing single. I can't believe that wasn't again, that song didn't really chart at all.
Yeah.
Next position, please, got to number 61. You know, that's respectable. But again, Cheap Trick is sort of slipping, but I love the record. I like the song Borderline, even though Madonna had a song called Borderline at the exact same time. Different songs.
That happened to them again, just like with Stop the Music.
Yeah, I know. They keep getting screwed on that. I don't know how that happens. Next position, please. The title cut I read was actually a leftover from Dream Police. The Sessions. Okay. And it sort of sounds like it because it has that more classic feel. And also, it was one other song was also You Talk Too Much was also.
Oh, right. Yeah. I got some old versions of it on those Epic archives.
Yeah, some box sets supposedly have the original versions of them. I think those are two of the best songs on the album. You know, it does feel like 70s Cheap Trick to a certain degree, more than some of the other stuff.
It wasn't Twisted Heart. Is that in the authorized version?
I don't know,
because that's on that Sex America Cheap Trick box set. It's really.
I just looked at it as like right before we got on, and I can't. I'm blanking on the names of the other songs that are on the new authorized version.
Right.
But they did put Invaders of the Heart and Don't Make Our Love a Crime as actual album tracks now.
I think those are the two best songs on the album.
In my little notes, what I put on there, I wrote under Invaders of the Heart should have been on the album.
Yeah.
Right in my notes. Bun jams on this track. Fast Rocker.
Invaders of the Heart was on, but Don't Make Our Love a Crime wasn't.
And then I Don't Make Our Love a Crime. I put great chorus, verses okay, better than most of the included tracks. So those are both great songs. I don't know how they didn't make it on there, but
and Invaders of the Heart has the great false endings. Okay. So it does the riff and then it ends and they go into the riff again and then it ends.
Okay.
The drums pick it up again with a fill and they
right. There was that little bit of a drum solo sort of towards the end.
Right. They end the song like 5 or 6 times. And then if you listen as it's fading out in the very end, you can hear someone go, "Great, we have our choice of lousy endings now." I love that bit.
Yeah, I still think Cheap Trick has really made another solid album. I
totally.
I could complain a little bit about the production. I would say, it's too slick. I do think they could have cut some songs out, not the so-called bonus tracks that were on the CD. Those were fine, but I would say maybe the song 3D, I don't care for.
But that's like one of those experimental things.
Right. It was that thing that Rick was into.
You want to try something, go ahead. You give me a whole album's worth of other just perfect pop songs, you've earned it,
Exactly. And the song Todd Rundgren wrote, Heaven's Falling, it was never a single of any sort as far as I know. And that's a fantastic song that, could have done something, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, who knows the way it was going. And
I'd like to hear Todd do the calling me part.
Released July 19, 1985. It actually charted better than Next Position Please. It hit number 35. So that's an improvement from a chart position. However, some songwriter, some song doctor or whatever named Mark Radis was co-writer of 8 songs on this album.
Why did it take so long to make this album?
Well, we took about 6 months off and really thought about the songs a little bit and sat around and took a lot of time writing them.
8 of the 10 songs. And I'm going to make this sort of bold statement. Most people write off their album, The Doctor, which we'll talk about next, as being sort of Cheap Trick's worst album. I think that belongs to Standing on the Edge, because The Doctor is a better record than Standing on the Edge. It's just that Standing on the Edge has Tonight It's You, and that song is so freaking good.
Tonight It's You is incredible. I think Tonight It's You totally alone pulls apart your argument, but I'm listening.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is that The Doctor has no Tonight It's You.
Right.
Okay, so it's just marred by, I'm jumping because we didn't really talk about Standing on the Edge yet, but I think Standing on the Edge, the material wise, is just not nearly as good beyond Tonight It's You. I like maybe 2 songs, Tonight It's You and How About You.
How About You is so good.
And the rest of it, I'm sorry, I don't.
This Time Around's great. Title track's good. Little Sister's great.
Little Sister's not bad. Little
Cover
Sister's
Girl's
not bad.
great.
Standing on the Edge, it sounds like it should have been one of their soundtrack songs, I would think. you know.
Well, I think their soundtrack songs are great.
Yeah. Oh, some of them are exceptionally
I love
good.
Up the Creek.
Some of them are, and well, I didn't like the Top Gun song though. That one's
No,
a little, that one's a little bit
and
lame.
Their version of Money, That's What I Want from Caddyshack 2, not a high point.
No.
Although I confess I did not revisit it for this project.
That's okay. We weren't gonna get into B-sides and soundtracks, so that's perfectly okay. Now, Jack Douglas was the producer on this record, and that sounded like a really solid idea because he produced the first album.
Yeah.
He's great. He's done Aerosmith, John Lennon.
I wish it sounded like the first album.
What's that?
I wish it sounded like the first
exactly. Album. But he didn't mix the album. It was mixed by some guy named Tony Platt. And Tony Platt also went through and added electronic drums and keyboards onto the album without the band knowing about it. And
the pre-Platt version.
Is it maybe it's on YouTube somewhere? I would love to hear that, like an early version. There are on one of the box sets, Jack Douglas mixes of 2 songs, apparently.
From this.
They're on some box set somewhere, or one of the something with the an expanded edition or something like that. But I haven't heard them myself. But
because I thought they took like most of those extras from those expanded editions and put them, well, not all of them, but most of them on those Epic Archives things I mentioned before.
Yeah. Well, they're great, and there's so much material. I mean, they have so much good stuff that came out in that period. Yeah. But for me, that's the major problem with the album is, in addition to, the songs seem like kind of forced a lot of the time. The production is really distracting in a lot of ways, and even a song like Little Sister, like you say, Little Sister's a good song, but it would benefit from like a ballsier mix or something, or like just something.
Little Sister, and there's that bridge in Little Sister, which is just almost totally mind-blowing to me, where it's like, I've made it for the call, and she gets it all. And then there's that weird, like, like, you know what I'm talking about? That weird thing?
Yeah.
That's like, I think that's, and it's like this really bizarre production thing, but it kind of like, it's almost kind of a good bizarre production thing, but also like, just like the dynamics that they do in that part of the song, not just the production. I think that's a great moment.
Well, I think Bunny Carlos was pretty upset with Standing on the Edge when it came out, because
he plays acoustic drums or something.
Yeah, he wanted to be credited as playing acoustic drums, not the drums as they turned out. And it's kind of one of those things where when you're you were a really big group, like Cheap Trick, and now you're not doing as well commercially, you're kind of more at the mercy of the label. And I can't imagine they didn't work with some guy like Mark Radis for no reason other than they were forced to.
Right.
You never heard of this guy again afterwards, so it's not like they enjoyed the process so much. Right. They didn't want him on the next album or whatever. So I would say, I'll stand by my statement that Standing on the Edge is a worse record than The Doctor, but the caveat is Tonight It's You is amazing, and nothing on The Doctor is as good as that song. Here it is. Here's The Doctor. Okay. Came out in November 86. Now, the weird thing is they used that mixer that Bunny Carlos was so upset about as the producer on The Doctor. So clearly they're going in more of that direction of, we're going to go in that sort of the electric drums, the synthier sounds, no edge on the guitar whatsoever on almost any song. Although they were allowed to write the songs again, because most of the songs were co-writes between Robin and Robin and Rick, right?
Which is also unusual.
Yeah, because they didn't usually write together, and it was usually Rick by himself, and then Robin occasionally would chime in. But The Doctor is maligned as considered to be the band's worst album,
right?
And I'm not really going to extend a lot of effort in defending the album in terms of calling it like some lost gem or whatever, you know, because I don't think it's a lost gem, but I do think it's better than people give it credit for. And if there was some way to strip out all that crap and just hear how they played them, if it was a time where the four of them in a room playing those songs,
Yeah.
there's some of these have to be better than that. I mean, than the way they turned out.
Well,
they just have to be,
because I mean, they're really good songs. And
right.
first of all, as you mentioned, you know, you have Robin singing on them, so they all rock that much to have, you know, to hear Robin sing on them. And yeah, I think if you just like strip off the keys, or just, I would, if Cheap Trick came around and they did like, we're playing all the songs of the Doctor live, but like without a keyboard player, I would like so go to that. That would be so amazing.
Well, I found some live videos. They were on some kind of TV show around the Doctor period.
Mm-hmm.
And they played two of these songs. They played Kiss Me Red,
okay,
which was, I think, the song that was forced
that's
on
the one
them.
that's not written by them.
Not written by them. Sounds like Starship is what it could have been. A Mickey Thomas song on that one. And one other one. And the keyboard player was Todd Howarth, who later went on to play with Fraley's Comet.
Okay.
Okay, so a little, I tie every single video.
You had to bring Kiss in it. It doesn't even, not even covering the album where they mention Kiss in a song.
No, we're not at that period. So the Doctor was the band's poorest selling album to date.
Okay.
I heard it sold somewhere like 80,000 copies, which for a band, again, I mean, I don't mean to keep dwelling on sales because that's not the biggest thing, but when you are a major label band and you are in the 1980s, it matters. Right. You know, I mean, for your career for you to continue on as a band. And this was, go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris.
Well, no, I was just going to say it's interesting that you mentioned like the poor sales. So I think I mentioned to you, I actually just bought the Doctor for being a longtime Cheap Trick fan, and like hearing it here and there and being like, ew, that sounds terrible. And then and then a while ago, I was like, you know what, this is stupid. I should have the Doctor. And I looked around. I never, if I had seen it somewhere, I would have bought it, you know? So
right.
Why haven't I seen it? And I guess that's why, because they didn't sell so many. And the ones they didn't sell, what do? They destroy them for like for like tax purposes or whatever.
There's probably a cutout back in 1990 or something. A whole box, all the boxes got shipped and destroyed or something.
Yeah. So, and in fact, I ordered this from overseas.
Wow.
So it was like $6.
Well, you made a post on a group that we're in Facebook at talking about the Doctor, and it was like, it seemed very, very positive. Well, tell me about it, because for me, when I made my notes on it, I said, well, okay, so my favorite songs are the title track, The Doctor, which great. I think is pretty good hard rock song, weird production, but whatever. The whole thing is that way.
We've discussed that. Yeah.
Are You Lonely Tonight? Which
Tonight's great.
I thought was really good. And I really like Name of the Game. I thought was a good song. And besides that, like, I mean,
I love It's Only Love.
You know what? My note on that one was no reason that couldn't have been as big as Chicago at the time.
Yeah.
It's a great song. It was like it could have been a bit. There's no reason if Peter Cetera can have number one after number one, why couldn't that song have been a number one?
No, I mean, that's a great chorus. I love Take Me to the Top. So the song started to dribble into my awareness, like through these Epic Archives comps and like box sets. So I knew like a scattering of songs from the album from that. And you know what? I liked them, and again, like I said, so at some point I'm like, okay, I will buy this album, and it never came up. And then you invited me to do this thing, and I'm like, great. I know all those out. Oh, wait, I don't know the Doctor. So
yeah.
I listened to it on Spotify, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I finally because I could only find them to ship from overseas, and I'd rather try and buy something local. So
right, of course.
Ridiculous shipping prices. But I was like, you know what? I got to have it for this. So I bought it. But listening to it on Spotify and then listening to it on the record even more so, it's like, it's like you said when comparing it to Standing on the Edge, which, I'm not, choosing that side on that one, but the tunes are there. I mean, like, it's as consistent a batch of tunes as they've ever done, I think.
But I think the reason why I like the Doctor
so insane.
Yeah, the reason why I think I like the Doctor more, even though the really terrible production is even more terrible on the Doctor, is because of the fact that they wrote all the songs.
Right.
Rick and Robin wrote the tunes, except for that Manulipalator or whatever, which I think that producer co-wrote, which I said it sounds like Miami Vice.
That's not a good song.
No, it's not a good song. So I think that's what gives it the edge for me, is just because it is their original song, so the tunes are better. But like I said, it has no Tonight It's You, and so is that what it was? Tonight It's You, or
Tonight It's You.
Tonight It's You. It has no Tonight It's You, and so that's why Standing on the Edge, I think, for most people is considered better. But I think if you're a serious fan, as we are, if you really, really delved into the tunes, I would go with the Doctor.
Yeah. See, and as I've just explained, I'm only a new Doctor fan, so maybe that's why I'm not there. Maybe I'm just not there yet.
You let me know. You let me know in 6 months. Well, the John Brandt era of Cheap Trick coming to an end around 1987 or so. After the Doctor, yeah, and I don't think it's the fault of the Doctor or anything like that, but his time in Cheap Trick did come to an end as Tom Peterson came back in 1987, 1987, 88, around that period. And I think I've heard some interviews actually done recently with Robin Zander, where he talked about the problem with the 80s records was that there was no Tom Peterson and the band lost direction. I felt like that was a little bit overstated, but he would know better than me because he was actually there, but I don't, Tom is great and his bass playing is different than John Brandt. There's no question. And on those early 70s records, the 70s records, he had a more dominant role, but I wouldn't say that, while he was gone, the problem with Cheap Trick was that the bass was not that good,
Unless Tom Peterson would have been in the studio fighting for better sounds.
It could have been, or no, I need my 8-string bass on this one. I've got to do, whatever. Yeah. I've got to do something different. But the band in this point, we're talking about the next record now. So in 87, Tom comes back. They start working on a new album, Lap of Luxury, which I actually found out I do not own anymore. The CD was lost. I've had it.
So I'll have to hold mine up.
You can hold yours up. There it is. Came out April 12th, 1988. It is the return of Tom Peterson. This album,
the return of the two guys on the front,
exactly, just like the old thing from In Color and
boys on the front, schlubs on the back.
Yeah, which is a great marketing ploy for those guys.
It's hilarious.
Produced by a guy named Richie Zito.
They do it also on the 7-inch. I actually just noticed this.
Which one's that one?
Cruel.
Oh, Don't Be Cruel.
So there's Robin and Tom pictured with like Bunny and Rick
little bun in the back,
in framed photos on the wall.
Yeah. Well, you look. I mean,
he's in the back room or something, and then Rick is in this mirror. So I don't know what it is.
I mean, Bun's got to know he's the drummer that looks like your accountant. So
used car salesman, I think.
Okay, that's what he says.
Well, yeah, or that's what they say or something. I don't know.
Well, he was great. So the original lineup is back for the new album.
Best drummer ever.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
Best singer ever and the best drummer ever.
And a note on Lap of Luxury is I said the drums sound like drums on most songs. Mm-hmm. Not everyone, but they sound more like drums again. Whereas on the last two, this Tony Platt guy really does not like acoustic drums. I guess that's what we're saying, because that was Bun's.
So much so that the term acoustic drums had to be invented.
Exactly.
To contradict whatever.
Bun had to coin that phrase.
Yeah.
Bun had to coin that phrase. Okay, so the new album comes out. They're using a lot of outside writers. From what I understand from the lore of the Cheap Trick story was that they were given this ultimatum that basically you're going to do it our way on this record or you're dropped and you're done with Epic Records. And Cheap Trick and their manager decided, okay, this is the route we're going to go. We're going to work with these professional songwriters and we're going to use the songs you tell us. And it worked in this particular instance. Whereas it didn't work on The Doctor and Standing on the Edge. It third time's the charm, I guess. And this album is actually the second biggest seller Cheap Trick's ever had.
Yeah.
It went to number
Flame.
Right. And well, number 16 on the Billboard album charts. The Flame was number one, a number one single. That might be their only number one. Don't Be Cruel was number 4. The Elvis cover was number 4. That still was top 5. Ghost Town, which I think is better than The Flame and a decent ballad, I suppose, hit number 33. And Never Had a Lot to Lose was a single and it hit number 75.
Well, yeah, there's a video for it because I had the Cheap Trick video cassette.
I think I had that too. Like they had a bunch of their videos from that period.
Where he punches the hole through the guitar. It's like a special guitar. And then he plays through the hole. Oh, Rick.
Yeah. So the album is, look, I remember when this album came out and I was a senior in high school and I loved it. And I have always sort of in the back of my mind thought of this as a really great Cheap Trick record. However, revisiting it, I think it's a good Cheap Trick record, not a great Cheap Trick record. It did the trick. It got them back on the radio. It got them back having a hit song. They were able to do their touring profile went way up. I remember they did a concert on MTV Spring Break. You know, they were everywhere that year. And The Flame, you know, look, The Flame is a song that it's for the couple skate. It's for the, you know, the putting your lighter up and hugging your gal at the show or whatever. It's not.
And they play it all the time.
And like you said, the vocal on it is amazing from Robin Zander, even though the song is kind of, you know, less than interesting.
When you're given this schlock from a band like Cheap Trick, who you love and who you like for many other reasons, you know, and who are you like for you and me, Cheap Trick are one of like our bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not just a band we like, you know. They're like,
no, they're instrumental in our DNA. They're in our musical DNA. Yeah, they're part of the musical DNA. They are. When I make comparisons to bands, most of the time, the comparisons filter through Kiss, The Replacements, Cheap Trick,
sure,
you know, and a handful of others. And I'm sure yours are similar with a couple others too. And it always filters everything there. Cheap Trick, they're just, they're so fantastic. So I understand what you mean. It's disappointing that they had to, that they're having this sort of this pablum like pushed on them, but it served its purpose, I suppose, because like I said, it did help them out. And it's not like the album is terrible. I think their Don't Be Cruel cover is great. I like their cover of Don't Be Cruel.
I remembered it as just horrible, but listening to it, I'm like, nah, it's good.
It's not bad.
Because it's, you know, it's a good enough song as the original, but Robin's singing it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I think Rick,
and then the bits with the you know, was a little heavier than the Elvis version, so I like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I was gonna say Rick's guitar sounds pretty good in that one. I kind of liked it. But really, you know,
there's all those weird gated backing vocals and stuff, which I could.
There's, you know, whenever you try to make an album sound so current for its day, production wise, those are always the ones that sound the most dated.
Yep.
And I mean, there's a song on here. I'm trying to figure out which one it was. No Mercy. Oh, they threw every single stupid 80s excess into that song. It sounds exactly like it was written to be on Top Gun 3 or something.
Yeah.
That chorus it's like, it sounds like an outtake from The Doctor. And if I'm being honest, you know what I mean?
It's worse.
It's not a good song.
So I hadn't listened to this in a long time, and I threw it on, and I was like, "Let Go" comes on. I'm like, this is a great song. Like I didn't have a fond opinion of this before I put it on.
Okay.
I knew I loved Never Had a Lot to Lose, and I knew that there were other songs on here that I liked. Let Go comes on, which I actually didn't remember that song in particular. And I thought it was great. Yeah. And then No Mercy comes on, and I'm like, this is an Outside Rider song.
Yeah.
Right away.
And it's so awful. The worst cliched lyrics, the drum machine. It's everything that was wrong with the previous records. It's back on this track. In 211. I mean, it's so awful.
Yeah.
And then you go right into The Flame. So instantly, so now, like I said, I'm reevaluating it.
I need to revisit.
Yeah, which I never need to hear The Flame again. I'm glad it worked out for them. Whatever. Yeah. So, Space. I don't know. I don't remember the original by Charlie Sexton. I don't remember that one.
I read that's what it was. I'm like, this is another Outside Rider. This is terrible.
Well, it was written by Mike Chapman and Holly Knight, which are.
Well, I love me some Chin Chap.
Yeah. Well, he's done some good work as a producer.
Chapman?
Chapman, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He definitely has. But that particular song is pretty generic and pretty bad.
Yeah.
Never Had a Lot to Lose. Awesome. Great song.
Never Had a Lot to Lose is, I mean, that's
heavy bass, great chorus. Yeah. Fantastic
song. By Rick and Tom, Robin and Tom. No, Rick.
That's interesting, and it's great. I mean, I love that, and we can tell it has that the bass riff is the big part of that. So you tell Tom had a hand in that one.
Yeah.
So they get, Tom, he had to have a song on the record if he's coming back to the band.
His triumphant return.
Exactly. Wrong Side of Love. I don't know. It's got a decent chorus, I suppose. It's sort of a rocker, but I thought again, some of the excesses of weird editing and just shit they were doing on that track makes no sense.
I like All We Need Is a Dream and All Wound Up.
I think All We Need Is a Dream has a great chorus.
Yeah.
A really, really good chorus. All Wound Up, good song. That should have opened up the album. That should have been first.
Yeah.
I think. They resequenced to put All Wound Up first. And Let Go is a great opener too. But I mean, like you said, then it goes into No Mercy and The Flame, and it's just like takes it down a notch, I guess. Ghost Town, like I said, I don't mind Ghost Town so much. I wouldn't voluntarily put it on a best of Cheap Trick mix or something for somebody. But if it came on the radio or something like that, or I was hearing it at the grocery store and, because it's kind of mellow and you could hear it in the grocery store now, I wouldn't be angry at it. It's not, at least Rick Nielsen was partly writing it, I mean,
the first few times I saw them, they were playing it and I was like, but listening to it just now, it's a good song.
Yeah.
Definitely better than half the album.
Yeah. This is a very much maligned period for Cheap Trick. And a lot of people, most fans love the 70s stuff, because that's their heyday.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of overlook the 80s. And then you hear people saying, well, then they kind of made that comeback with that self-titled one in the 90s. And, they love what they're doing now. But they do kind of overlook a lot of that 80s stuff. Mm-hmm. And I would hope that, somebody watching this video would at least get some ideas about, reevaluating some of that stuff. Giving it another listen for sure, because, it was kind of a low period for Cheap Trick, but it doesn't mean it was all garbage. I mean, it wasn't,
I mean, I think most of them, at least half the 80s albums, I would say are essential. And certainly, personally, pry them out of my cold, dead hands. I'd never give them up. I love them.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for watching till the end. I hope you dug this. A little bit of food for thought here when you're thinking about what Cheap Trick records to purchase or listen to. So don't be so afraid to try out records like The Doctor or Next Position Please or something like that, where the critics say that it's a terrible album. Think for yourself on this one. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.